Welcome to the Early Founder Podcast. My name is Philip, and I run a high school startup incubator called Launchpad, where I lead high schoolers nationwide through the startup process with the help of industry veterans. Along this journey, I was curious to see what makes an entrepreneur successful, what traits, experiences, and habits they possess, especially when they're young. So that's why I made the Early Founder, to have conversations with those who have made massive breakthroughs at a young age, and to share their experiences with other aspiring founders. Today's guest is Dhruv Bindra, the co-founder and CEO of Styl AI, an AI-powered fashion app that offers users personalized clothing recommendations through a Tinder-like interface. Since its launch in July 2023, Styl has achieved significant milestones, including over 100,000 downloads and over 20 million user swipes, gained solely through social media marketing. In December 2024, Styl was acquired for 7 figures. Thank you so much for coming here today, Dhruv.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me, Philip.
Okay. My first question is, where does your company stand today, and what milestone are you most proud of so far?
So, as you mentioned, we sold Styre. So, my co-founder and I are currently working with the buyer. Unfortunately, can't share too many details yet because we're all still in stealth. But what I will share is we're in San Francisco full time. I graduated a semester early, so I'm done with my college experience. My co-founder, Rahul, he's a junior at Duke, so he's taken a leave of absence right now. Second part of the question was what milestone I'm the most proud
Yes.
of?
Mhm.
So I've been explaining this a lot to people, but are you familiar with the concept of a hedonic treadmill?
No, I'm not familiar.
It's basically like this philosophical thing that your emotions always regress to this stable baseline. So think of it this way, right? The guy who recently bought a motorcycle wants a car. The guy who recently got a car wants a fancier car. You just keep wanting more and more things in life. So eventually the novelty of your achievement wears off, and then you kind of just get used to what that achievement is. So back when we had zero downloads, I all I wanted was 10,000. When we had 10,000, all I wanted was 100K. And then when we hit that, I'm looking around me, I'm like, these apps are getting million downloads so easily. So it doesn't really feel like we've hit any big milestone that we've always achieved. So it's a roundabout way of saying I don't really know what particular milestone I'd feel the most proud of. I'm always on the lookout for what to
Yeah,
unlock next.
I see. So, as you got more accomplishments, it kind of each previous one got like more and more overwhelming, right? So, I see.
Yeah.
Um, can you like bring me back to what a typical day in the life looked like at like the height of all the busyness?
So we had a really atypical anachronic path where I never took time off of school to work on style. So during the semester was a very different day in the life to when we were in the summer. So my sophomore and junior summers, we were in San Francisco, hunkered down in an Airbnb, and that was like 7 days a week, like just around the clock just working on this, right? Which was so much fun. So I'll tell you, like, I guess this most recent summer, a day in the life would typically be um so Rahul and I lived in a hacker house with rooms right next to each other. So I'd wake up, let's call it around 8:30. And I had like this morning ritual where I never had a content calendar. So what I would have is I knew I had to post 2 to 3 reels every single day, and one reel would always be a part of a series. So for example, the one that ran throughout the summer was not shaving my mustache until we hit 100,000 downloads. And I think I recorded a video every day for 35 days. So that was super helpful as a crutch. But then the first video I would record, like, would just be a question mark. So I would step into the shower. We typically would have around 10 to 12 minutes of hot water coming in. And what I would do is I would just enter the shower with the thought of come up with a video idea for today. And just like this biological response was by the 11th or 12th minute, if I hadn't already come up with an idea, the fear of cold water coming on me would like spur the really creative
Yeah.
ideas. And so it was such a great way of always walking out of that shower with an idea I was really excited about, and then spend the next couple of hours sort of working on it, posting it. And then each day was honestly just like a lot of ad hoc tasks. So I manage all the growth stuff for Style, talking to users every single day, but also wrote like a lot of the back end stuff. So yeah, kind of whatever Rahul needed me for or whatever was breaking at that time is what we were serving. But yeah, the gist of it was just it was between going to the kitchen to cook up breakfast, lunches, and dinners, or just being we worked out of my room. So it was just between those two. And once in a while, when we would get the chance to hit the gym, we were really bad about it during the summer, then we'd go ahead and do that. But yeah, that's kind of what the summer looked like.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, and I think the shower method is super creative, and I'm glad it worked. Can we rewind a bit to like your Like your what was your first experiences with entrepreneurship?
So both my parents actually are startup founders.
Oh,
So
really?
my dad's a serial entrepreneur. He's built and sold three companies now for long as I can remember. Like he's been my absolute hero and role model. And so I sometimes think like me wanting to be a founder is just a mimetic desire of wanting to be more like my dad. And so dining table conversations are all about his startups and just being fascinated at, the problems he's struggling with. He was always really good about like keeping my sister and I in the loop of like the problems he was facing. I like spent one summer just going with him to the office as well, just silently sitting in on meetings. And so I kind of was always thinking of ideas. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for about 2 decades, and then 5 years ago she started her own company as well. But yeah, I think seeded very early on in my childhood, like this passion for building something from scratch, not accepting the status quo and like, wanting to be super disruptive with it. My personal first stint at building something, um, at least of value, was I think not until my junior year of high school. So I built this organization called the Foundation for Young Innovators at FYI. And what it basically was a shock tank for student social entrepreneurs at the high school level. So I just saw a bunch of kids around me building some really great social initiatives. A lot of them, for the sake of getting into good colleges, but regardless, like these organizations had a really solid impact. The problem was investors were always really doubtful about, investing in students. And so the idea was, can I pull together a list of, top CEOs who can give great guidance and help these kids bring those ideas to life? And at the same time, India has this concept of something called corporate social responsibility, where
Yeah.
every company making above 500 crore Indian rupees, which I think I'm going to completely botch up the conversion, but it's about 85 rupees to $1. So you can do the math. Every company is required to take a portion of their profits and allocate it to some kind of social cause. And companies typically struggle with, being effective altruists. Where do you get the most bang for your buck? And so my idea was, let me go to conglomerates that have excess CSR allocation, ask them to give me some of that, and I would point it towards kids who would get these ideas. And so, yeah, I built that my junior and senior years, and that was probably like the first like startup-y thing that I'd ever done.
Yeah, I see. I think that's a great experience. Um, Leading on from that, was like your next stint like the creation of Style, or was there anything in between that?
I built a bunch of random things. I did like this COVID fundraiser thing that was a lot more tuned to an actual startup experience. And then my freshman thing is when I was working on like a fintech idea. So I wanted to build India's first profitable robo advisor. Super steep sort of dream. I was completely non-technical at the time. I entered Duke as an economics major, and I got connected through a series of contacts to the VP of tech of one of India's largest banks. And he'd built out like the MVP of the exact thing I was talking about. Used that, applied to YC for the first time. Got rejected, no interview either. But that was sort of like my intro into like a startup in its complete conventional sense, right? Like an idea that was meant to like go somewhere. And what ended up happening was actually my roommate at the time, freshman year, his dad owns and runs a $2 billion hedge fund in Manhattan. And so
Oh,
very conveniently, he was visiting one weekend. We had brunch together. I was telling him about this idea, and he's like, you don't know what you're talking about, but you seem like a bright kid and you have a lot of, ambition. Why don't you come work for me for the summer? And so that was a really incredible experience. I was in Manhattan my freshman summer. Um, and kind of what I took away from that was finance wasn't for me. And I say that because I felt very much like an Excel monkey day in, day out. Like the people were incredible. The work was really, really cool. But I find the most joy in very creative tasks, and I didn't find an outlet for that creativity in the finance role. And so that's when I came back to Duke my sophomore fall. I was like, okay, I want to work on a startup idea. A friend of mine, his name's Ryan Malik, he came to me with this concept of building a Tinder for clothes. I was like, Ryan, that's the dumbest idea I've heard of in my life. Started reading some ML papers. That's also when I decided I was going to add computer science to like what I'd be studying at Duke. And yeah, from there on, realized that a Tinder interface is actually a great UX primitive to be getting explicit signals on people's likes and dislikes. That's what makes TikTok so addictive. You just learn very quickly what people's preferences are, and then you can hyper personalize their experience. And so when I got around to it, I said yes to Ryan. We got Rahul as a front end engineer at the time at like basis points of equity, but he was working so damn hard, we bumped him up to an equal co-founder. We all went together into my sophomore year summer into SF. At the end of that summer, Ryan and I parted ways, all like super amicably. He just wanted to like pursue a deeper role in VC, and has always been super helpful whenever we needed him since then. And then Rahul and I kind of took it forward from then on for the next year and a half, and then finally to the acquisition last month.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. What a story. Now on to like the actual like specifics about building the venture. Um,
Yeah.
like once you guys had set up the team, how did you go about getting like early validation? How did you get your product out there?
So the very first thing we did was, and this was a mistake I made, I didn't realize how much people enjoy being beta users for your app or your startup. Like I was very shy about just going out and asking people to try this thing out. So in hindsight, I would have just done that, but what I ended up doing was I had a list of like 50 or 60 girls that I was friends with at Duke. I removed everyone from my close friend story. I just added these 60 girls and I put up like a series of stories, basically being like, okay, I have this idea. I need beta users. If you would like to be a beta user, please reply to this story. Which in my head was like a less awkward way than just being flat out rejected, and like an easy way for them to just like swipe away from the story if they didn't want to do it. But I think long story short, yeah, something like I think I had 60 girls there, 35 ended up saying they wanted to be beta users. And so the very, very first thing we did was we created like a Figma prototype where Ryan and I just got like a bunch of different items that were like trending from like the 10 most popular brands, Zara, H&M, Princess Polly, etc., etc. Hooked it up to this swiping mechanic, hosted it on an iPhone, went up to these girls and just went, "Can you swipe?" And they would swipe, and we'd like ask them about their fashion preferences. They really, really enjoyed the swiping mechanic. So we're like, okay, maybe on the user side, there is a lot of promise here. But it became very clear, as was with the inception of the idea, that algorithmically personalizing results was the way we had to go about it. And so the natural next step was creating an MVP where, after this initial user discovery interview, when I would be like, okay, Philip really likes, oh, it was only girls at the time, but Philippa really likes Zara, H&M, Princess Polly. I'm gonna curate a list of like 100 items that kind of like as her human stylist that I think she would really like. Go ahead and basically just again hard code that, but this time it was on a code base rather than on Figma. It was an Expo application, so we'd like hook it up to my phone. Like my laptop was basically serving as our server at the time. Meet these girls once a week in our dining halls. They would swipe, we'd log all the item IDs, and from there on, it was like super simple algorithm. I think we used like nearest neighbors or something. And then get that next set of 100 recommendations, go back to them, get them to swipe, get their feedback, and just a super iterative process like that. Eventually, once we had a decent amount of data, we were then able to actually properly move on to like a formalized app on test flight. And then, yeah, I think we really came out of the summer. So July 2023, as you rightly mentioned, that was like the proper like loud launch, public launch date for us. But what I'm talking about, this goes all the way back to like December 2022.
Wow. Yeah. So you've been doing it for basically like almost 2 years now, or like almost 2 years up until December, right?
Correct, exactly.
Okay. So I think one thing that really stood out to me about Style, I found out about it from like Instagram Reels, right? I think you really utilize social media marketing super well. So can you tell me a little bit about how you like strategize becoming viral?
So in hindsight, people hail it as, a strategy, but the way we actually went about it was complete desperation. So here's the raw, honest truth about our trajectory, right? We launched July 2023. My goal as someone who had taken ownership over marketing was 10,000 downloads by the end of the summer. On day one, I had like the semi-viral LinkedIn post. I think it got us 1,200 downloads. I was like, great, we're off to a good start. In the next 8 months combined, Philip, we had a grand total of 800 downloads. Nothing was working. So we were really good about campus marketing because, there you can kind of just like grind it out, right? Like slip a QR code underneath every single dorm room at Duke, paste a poster on every single like campus wall. Like you can do a lot of things. And so those 800 downloads is a function of how small a school Duke is. And so it was super indexed into Duke users. But on the social media front, I kind of just like resigned to the idea that I can't be the face of a women's fashion app. And so I was just circulating different sorority girls. None of their videos would break more than a couple hundred views. It was totally unoriginal, right?
Yeah.
But what Rahul and I really honed in on at the time was product. And looking back, I wouldn't do it any other way because in those 4 or 5 months, we built super closely with our users. We went from just like a window shopping platform to like having an entire like one-click checkout mechanic, having like this really cool AI search feature. Yeah, I don't even remember now, but like we really improved the product, and we saw that looking at like the cohorts of users who were using it, it was by far the stickiest with sorority girls, and we could tell this because we knew all the users we were talking to. These are all just like our friends, right? And so went back to that winter break. So now I'm talking December 2023. And I was like, how do I get every sorority girl in the US to download Style? So what I noticed was sorority Instagram pages follow back girls in their organization. So I scraped like 1.3 million Instagram accounts, and I
Oh
basically had
my
a
god.
database of every sorority girl in the US. Then I built this website called guessmysorority.com, where you'd log in with Google, you would answer five really funny questions and swipe on five items of clothing, followed by us guessing your sorority. But what happened was, as soon as you logged in with Google, we got your name. It was this super
Wow.
simple, like Levenstein distance algorithm with a scraped database. And about 90% of the times, we knew the right answer. It was just like an elaborate magic trick. And we took inspiration from Spotify Wrapped at the time, so the result was prepared in this beautiful shareable asset you could put on your Instagram story and your Snapchat stories. And so it had a really high K factor. And that was the first time we ever went viral. So I think it got something like 1.2 million page impressions in less than 2 weeks, almost all organic. I think our total spend was like $10 to seed it with like one sorority girl's video. One in every 10 people took it on Snapchat's in-app browser, because people were just sharing, being like, WTF is this result, right? And then like their friends would like try it out as well. The problem was the download click-through rate was really low. So people would get their results. The CTA was impressed by our algorithms. You'll be surprised by how well we can like understand your style, download style. There's something stupid like that. And like, yeah, less than 2% of the people actually downloaded the app. But still, like we went from 2,000 downloads in 8 months to 2,000 in a couple weeks. And that was like probably the lowest point for me, because that's when I took a step back. I was like, okay, style has just not been working. Guess my sororities kind of proof that I'm not a total idiot. Maybe I should just like bin style. But at that point, building your own company feels like your own kid. It's really hard to give up on your own kid. And so I really sat down with Rahul. I was like, look, you have done everything in your power to build this great app. It has been my responsibility, and I failed as a CEO to be able to growth market this. Just give me 2 weeks. I took out an A4 size sheet. I wrote like eight, nine things I wanted to try out. And I said, if none of these work out, we will put this idea aside. We'll figure out what to work on next. And the fifth or sixth thing was make a video with my face in it. First time I posted that video, 500K on TikTok. On Instagram, it got 21K. But I had this other account I used to post crypto videos on. I archived all my crypto posts, so it was pretty regular. But none of those videos, I think the max video was 10K views. The average video was like 2K views. So I was never. I never used to go viral, right? But then I posted this same video on that account and it got 4.1 million views. And now all of a sudden, people like, the overnight success, he got so lucky, but like no one really sees those 8 months of like, nothing working, being at its quietly, slowly building. But then from there on out, we started being super strategic with it. So even honestly, this one video that did go viral, it wasn't a total shot in the dark. Thanks to those like stints with those different sorority girls, I knew the verbiage to be using. I knew what hook had to be applied. Just the format of it with me and my face was like the one thing that really helped it, be a bit more original. And I think that's really what resonated with people. And yeah, so from then on out, kind of just like every single day, tried posting videos, did a bunch of series. We did like day one, day two of asking Alex Earl to be my co-founder. That was huge. I think that was the first time we ever broke the top charts. Yeah, and then just kept doubling down on it until all the way into December.
Yeah, I think what really stood out to me was like you were the like a male face of a female clothing app. And I think a lot of people really like that, right? And it's also it's unique, it's special, and I think that was a great thing that you did, even if it was unintentional, right? Um,
Yeah.
um, I know you kind of touched on this already, but were there like any additional resources? Like, did you ever seek funding? Did you seek mentorship? Um, and if you did, like, how did you find them?
Dude, all the time, man, all the time. I applied to YC like 4 or 5 times, rejected every single time. We had an interview once. They took like 6 days to like reject us as well. We were like really at the edge of our seats. We got through to like rounds 3 or 4 of a couple of really top accelerators, but just
Mhm.
no one thought the idea was worth funding. Um, which sucks at the moment, but looking back, like if I was in the investor's place, I wouldn't do anything different either, right? But it really made us grind a lot more. It made us super scrappy. Again, 100,000 downloads objectively is such a small number, but the reason why I think it really resonates with people as like a milestone, or even for me feels like a really big deal, is because never partnered up with any influencer. Spent $0 on ad spend. It was all just like grinding it out with like organic reach. And I think the muscle that that builds in a founder of just like, the tenacity to like not give up, I wouldn't exchange for anything else, right? And that's what I think was the most special about my style journey. And yeah, ultimately to be able to like afford SF housing this summer, we were super lucky. Duke had some really great resources. We won a couple of awards. We got this entrepreneurship fellowship. With that, we were able to, scrap together, I think like $12,000 or something. And so, we're also very disciplined about it though. Like Rahul and I had like a spreadsheet where we would keep track of like every single thing we would ever order. And I think the run rate was like $4 per meal on average.
Wow.
And the only way we could hit that was like cooking all our meals ourselves. And we wanted to hit our right protein. So it's like we every meal was basically just one tortilla with chicken. But it worked out so well because we weren't working out. And if we were eating like DoorDash food, we would have like, completely lost track of our fitness goals as well.
Yeah.
So everything worked out for the best.
Yeah. Um, I guess like you mentioned this a little bit earlier as well, but when you were facing all these troubles with style and it was hard to acquire users, did you ever consider like pivoting or moving style into a different direction with what you already had?
Every single day, our friends asked us to pivot. I I don't know, man. I had faith that this idea could work. We weren't experimenting all the ways possible. And I'm still not proud of the product we'd built completely. Like there's still so much I would change about it and so much further I know we could go. And that's what I'm really excited about this new company that's now acquired us. Having the resources to be able to do all of that. Like I think the acquisition process sometimes for founders feels like you're giving up in your old child and it feels like really hard, but I think we got really lucky because we're continuing to work in the same industry, so it's kind of like bringing my child into a bigger home
Yeah,
and like giving them more nourishment and now seeing them grow, like that's really what it feels like.
that's awesome.
So
That's
yeah, never
quite amazing.
pivoted.
Okay. Um, I remember reading up on like this 2 a.m. hiring story that you went like semi-viral for. Can
Oh
you tell
my
me about
God,
that?
yeah. No, that was okay. I have a lot of like controversial hiring stories. The real interesting one was I put out like this tweet saying, "Scrape Urban Outfitters in 48 hours. Email the finished catalog to Dhruv at stylapp.ai. You have 48 hours." Something like that. And like one emoji, like the salute emoji. And it just went bonkers viral on Twitter because people were shitting on me, being like, "Oh, he's just trying to like get free work done." And that kind of like accelerated the surface area of people that we were hitting, which is fantastic because we ended up getting stellar candidates. People who like saw through the noise and were like, "Why would this guy who has built an app that already has so many brands already scraped risk his entire reputation for the same brand to be scraped by people across the world again and again?" Like, obviously, there's no like malice behind this, right? He's just trying to filter through candidates who are willing to work hard. And it was perfect, Philip. Like, I think we had like 12 candidates that I was really bullish about. Two ultimately that we ended up picking. Their names are Dave and Lokesh. They are from small towns in India, absolute grinders. These guys used to work until like 4 a.m., completely unprompted. I would be begging them to slave. They'd be like, "No, we're not going to finish until the job is done." And I think the hiring process you have directly is responsible for what kind of like talent you're hiring. And I mean, they're so damn good. Even with the acquisition process here, like I've brought them along with me. So now they're
Oh, great.
working remotely from
Yeah.
India at this place. And like I will hopefully, if they would be willing to stick with me until the end of the ride, I would always work with them in any company. The 2 a.m. story you're talking about, that was just this kid at, I think it was UCSC, reached out to me on LinkedIn, um, saying he wanted to like help with designs or something. And again, I like told him like, okay, create the designs and send it back to me. And he stayed up until like 2 a.m., finished the designs and sent it to me. And so I put out an initial tweet about that, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, like stop glamorizing this hustle culture stuff. that wasn't entirely my point. I didn't ask him to stay awake till 2 a.m. I just respected the fact that he did. But then I kind of just doubled down on it and started like shit posting on Twitter. And then I don't know, like news organizations in India started picking this up and adding like a bunch of articles about us. And yeah, there's like a whole thing that it was meant to be a total joke. But yeah, anyways.
That's really funny. Um, as a college founder, right? I think you said you like recently graduated. Um, while you were building Style in college, did you face any unique logistical or personal challenges?
I was very, very particular about the fact that I'm not going to sacrifice my college experience. And I was, especially in the last semester, where it was my like, is the last time I knew I'd be experiencing like this, college lifestyle. I was very good about managing my time. So I was going out 2 times a week. I was living in a house with like six of my friends. Obviously, work takes a hit, right? Like it's a zero sum. But I really think I was in such a like a happier state because of the way I was prioritizing all of that. My work output like stayed strong still. So yeah, I think there's so many other stories as people who obviously build infinitely more successful companies than Style ever was. But there's always a necessary trade-off. And for me, like I was very happy with the level of success we had achieved, given what we'd been able to put in. What I will say though is like there will be periods when you really will have to sacrifice stuff. So like during the summers, just around the clock, just working. And I never felt like I was giving up on anything because there was so much momentum. There is nothing else I would rather be doing. But yeah, I think my advice to college founders is there is a place and time for the Silicon Valley glamorization of hard work. And that is very true. Nothing happens without hard work. But if you're not hitting PMF, things aren't breaking, you aren't forced to work hard, don't be into the default setting of this toxic mindset of I shouldn't go out because good founders don't go out. Like I think a lot like I was guilty of this myself, right? Like where you feel guilty for having fun because you shouldn't be doing that. But there's Ben Horowitz writes this as well, right? There's like peacetime CEOs and wartime CEOs. And when peacetime is happening, very rarely, you should be really good about just enjoying it so that you're ready for wartime.
Yeah. Was balancing schoolwork with making Style ever a problem for you?
I just had really great friends. Dude, honestly, like they would like sit me down and if I'd miss lectures, like walk me through everything. Before exams, like pulling all-nighters, they'd be by my side. Like I got super, super lucky. I had incredible friends. So yeah, I'd be skipping lectures. We'd have group assignments where they would do all the heavy lifting. Um, I would not have graduated if it wasn't for these guys.
Yeah. Okay. Now moving on to like a few like challenges and breakthroughs. For an app like Style, there's pretty intense competition, right? So, what was your secret to standing out or differentiating your offering?
That's a good question. I think the way we saw it was yeah, like from the user side, there's probably a zero sum of if I'm in the motor shop, I'm gonna go to like a couple of places, and Style was trying to break into that habit of like instead of going to like Princess Polly's website, shop Princess Polly on our app, right? Um, but I really think we never like we were like too hung up on where people are like currently spending their time. We were a lot more focused on like making this the most like addictive experience possible. It's a roundabout way of saying like we were just confident about our vision with what personalized shopping should look like was so undeniably going to work that we didn't have to validate that. We just had to work towards it. So we didn't really pay too much attention to competitors. What I will say is on the social media front, this ended up working out very organically as I described, but our unique voice was basically just me unapologetically being myself, right? So like I will never talk in an American accent. There are some words here and there that, like, naturally, by virtue of being in the US for the last 4 years, like the way I roll my R's or something like that has changed compared to when I was in high school. But I will never intentionally mask my accent. And that's what caused like a lot of controversy or slash like appreciation to like depends on who you ask, but like this brown dude with the thick Indian accent talking about creating this fashion app for Gen Z women, there was no competitive equivalent. This was a very, very unique brand voice, and I really doubled down on the whole building in public as well, the whole founder-led marketing. Like Rahul and I sometimes would do like really silly trends or share stories. And that was partly because we wanted to keep up this cadence of posting 2 to 3 times a week, and partly because like we knew that that would like lend credence to this overarching theme of a very unique social media voice. So yeah, that's the app in social media competitive landscape.
Yeah, you basically made your own like influencer community, right? Or like you basically got like, well, I would say you became an influencer in of yourself for the company, right? Which I thought was really cool. You're like your own sponsorship. Um,
And advice to founders is also it pays dividends in ways you cannot even imagine. I've been so fortunate how that's translated to like LinkedIn and Twitter and like my own personal Instagram. The people that that then attracts who would want to work with you going forward. I mean, I wish I could tell you like the CEO who's acquired us, he is someone I've looked up to for years. I couldn't even imagine being in the same room with him, let alone like him choosing to buy us out, right? But in a few months, like when we can release the news and stuff, like you will think back to this and you'll understand what I'm talking
okay.
about. But all of that was only possible because of this narrative you're able to build out by putting yourself out there. So I know it's scary, but my single biggest piece of advice is this is the time and age to do it. Get over that initial hesitation of posting because here's the golden rule, right? This is what my friend told me that broke me out of this mold of being scared to put my own face out there. She said, if your video is shit, nobody is gonna watch it, so you're not embarrassing yourself in front of too many people. It's only if it's good is the algorithm gonna pick it up. It hits so many people, and at that point, you have nothing to be embarrassed about. So, what really is the hesitation of getting started,
Yeah.
right? And to me, that was just like a because the immediate like gut response is like, oh my God, like everyone I know is gonna see this and they're gonna judge me. But yeah, I think that really was like the unlock of a couple of like close friends might see it. If they judge me, that's not an opinion I should be caring about anyways, and the broader world won't have the opportunity to judge me unless I'm worth being judged for. So yeah.
Yeah. Now that you've made it so far, was there a point where like things started to feel real? Like, what point did you feel like, man, I'm the shit? Like, I made it big, or like, do you even feel like that?
Not at all. Not at all. This is the hedonic treadmill thing, right? Like maybe it's a recipe for never being satisfied. I hope not, because I feel very content with what we've achieved so far. I feel very grateful. But I've never felt like this shit because there's just so much more to unlock and yeah. I think there's just the goalpost keeps moving up, right? So
Yeah.
it's important to never let it get to your head either. And I think my parents are really good about that. Like they compliment me so much, but they always like remind me as well about, the importance of it's silly to say the importance of being humble because that's kind of like self-defeating. No one's supposed to say they're humble, but like at least coming across to people as not being, extremely narcissistic. I think that's actually really, really, really important and something people who achieve bursts of virality like end up getting skewed very, very early on. And it's easy to because the dopamine rush when you're going viral is so strong. But like I think that's like one warning sign I would give to people. Don't let it get to your head.
Yeah. So, in retrospect, how would you define or measure the impact and success of style today?
The most gratifying thing to me was the win we were able to get the people who helped us along the way. Especially Dave and Lokesh. Man, those two guys, like they deserve the fucking world. Oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to curse.
It's
Sorry. They,
totally fine.
they deserve like the absolute world. They grinded so hard. By every yardstick out there, we underpaid them like crazy because we couldn't afford to. When the acquisition happened, the joy it gave me to be able to give them that bonus and the salary bump that they could then get with this new venture, that's what made me happiest.
That's awesome. Yeah. Now looking ahead, where do you see yourself heading in the next few years?
I really hope this new company we're a part of is going to be a rocket ship. I'm very, very excited about it. I think, you know, Rahul and I kind of took a step back when we visited these guys in San Francisco, when we were pitching to them. We were surrounded by a team of engineers who were like A++ players, like people we would dream of maybe independently convincing to like recruit into our own company. And then the money that we've been able to raise over here, thanks to this incredible CEO who's spearheading it, is is a dollar amount we could have never coughed up. So with all of these resources and this new idea, it's it's in the same I like vein of personalized shopping, but there is a very, very big spin to it, and it's going to be very paradigm shifting. I'm sorry, I don't mean like very cryptic about it, but I like legally cannot explain more.
Yeah, of course.
But I think there's just so many elements where if it all comes together, it should be really big. And I hope this can be it for the next few years. Who's to say? But yeah, longer term, I personally definitely want to go back to India. It's where I grew up. I'm super patriotic. India's growing really fast. I want to be a part of that story. It's just a question of when.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see like where you're gonna be in the next 3 or 4 years. I think you'll do incredible
Right
things.
back at you, Philip. I mean, this is an amazing initiative that you've taken. I'm sure, like, college and beyond, you're going to be super successful. I'm very excited for you.
Thank you very much. Okay, back to the interview. Um,
Yeah.
have you set any like recently? Have you set any like personal goals for yourself as you move forward?
Um, I have like a bunch of New Year's resolutions. I'm trying to think of like what's the most meaningful. Like
Or
the
like
underlying
even the
philosophy,
non-meaningful ones?
the underlying philosophy of my life is live stories worth telling. I'm just such a big believer, and that's why I love startups so much. I feel like the journey of building something is just so inherently interesting. It's why I wouldn't work like a boring finance job, right? Like when you go to a dinner party and people ask you like what you're doing, like telling them about the DCF model you build is just so banal.
Yeah,
But the journey of a startup, even through its failures, in fact, especially because of its failures, makes for such cool stories. Because like the Travis Kalanick talk about Uber, like all the failures he had, but he stuck by it, and then Uber was so successful, and people take a step back, they're like, wow, like this is like such an incredible thing. I think is the baseline philosophy I live my life by. And so I really the one personal goal I'm setting for myself is keeping that in mind, embrace failure and embrace being really bad at things early on, because even like with the success of style, I think that puts pressure on your next thing should also be successful. But if you constantly are only picking things that you're naturally good at, you'll never really grow, right? So, for instance, I'm a really bad engineer. I want to be doing a lot of like the dev tasks at this company. I'm going to suck at it initially, right? Like all the engineers will be like 10x better than me. But as long as I'm okay with embracing that, hopefully a few years from now when I do get better, and then I get to tell that story about how like I stuck by it and I like always grinded. Then people are like, "Oh my God, Dhruv, like that is such an incredible story." So taking this overarching philosophy that motivates me and using that to get better at things I'm not naturally good at, whether that's hopefully by the end of this year being in the best shape of my life. I've currently gotten super out of shape. Getting really good at coding, meeting people, getting back into reading, things that I'd given up on that I've really like fallen in the back wheels on. Yeah, that would be like the overarching goal.
yeah. Now on to like advice in closing. Um, what's one piece of advice you'd give to a teenager who wants to make a startup tomorrow?
Get started. It is easier than the window between ideation and execution went like this after GPT came out, and now with Cursor and all these tools, it's just shrinking even more. You have no excuse, even as a non-technical person, to not at least hack together an MVP of your idea. And people
Yeah.
fail to understand this because there's just like this mental block. But yeah, I like my biggest advice to non-technical people is download Cursor, try coding with ChatGPT. I swear, like so much of style was built through just the English language, just being patient with GPT, prompting it over and over again until it wrote the code. I could never recreate all the code I wrote for style. I couldn't explain the code we wrote for style. But I know I could give it enough time to do it again because it's just a function of how patient you are. So yeah, get started. Start with like the simplest version possible. For style, we had like this crazy dream about personalized shopping. Before we even built a shopping platform you could check out on, we created a window shopping app that you could only swipe on, and then you would get like visit website links. So yeah, work your way down to the simplest possible MVP and then just build it yourself.
Moving on from there, like which resources, like books, podcast communities, or anything else, do you recommend for aspiring young founders?
I actually think that while I can like virtue signal a lot, being like, oh, 0 to 1 Peter Thiel, go read that. I actually think the most helpful advice was none of this common stuff out there, but very personalized advice I was getting. And that's because we always built in public, right? So I would put out Instagram videos telling my users, I am struggling with how to do this design feature. They would give me feedback and then I would implement those designs. Same with Twitter. I'd be like, okay, I want to enable, event tracking. Should I use Amplitude? Should I use Post Hog? Like I would get feedback from people. So I think entrepreneurship is not about like the you can read books to get really excited about it, but then once you're really in the weeds, reading a book, I think this might be controversial, is going to be a bit of a distraction. What you really want to be doing is getting advice on like point specific things. And my huge advice here is start tweeting. I started January of last year. It has been monumental in getting me connected to some really cool people.
Start tweeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically just keep people updated on your progress and like build in public.
Exactly. And I think people are also like, what would I tweet about? Like, what's
Mhm.
my unique voice? Building a company is something so inherently interesting and full of like ups and downs. Again, the whole live story is worth telling, right? That if you just build in public, your day to day is content. What you're going to be struggling with things every day, just put it out there.
I see. Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So then, since you mentioned that, with the rise of Gen AI, it's the curve has become a lot easier to overcome, right? So then, what would you recommend to be like specific skills or experiences for someone to acquire?
The canonical wisdom here is distribution is going to be the real unlock, i.e., eventually ChatGPT will just build the whole application for you, but who's going to market it? I don't, I personally think the value is still very much in the soft skills you're building, and these application layers thing will continue to evolve. Maybe tomorrow there's just some like really incredible like AI influencer on demand thing that just like puts out your video to like all the right audiences immediately. Like who's to say, right? But what is undeniable is you need to be the type of person who is a self-starter, who is like, all the canonical traits of an entrepreneur, like you need to like have that. And I think the only way to get there is by just grinding through it in the early days. So don't have an excuse of, oh, I'm an economics major. I don't know how to code. I need to like sit and wait to find like a technical person. And oh, because I couldn't find a technical person, now I can't build my company. Either try to find someone super quickly, and if you genuinely cannot, just like start building it out yourself, or don't even try to find someone. Like with Cursor, if I had Cursor my sophomore year, I may have never recruited anyone to work with me on this. I'm glad I did because the coding left like this company would not have happened without Rahul, and he's way, way, way better than like me and Cursor, and allowed me to focus on other tasks. But really just get started. You'll develop incredible skills even while struggling through it, especially while struggling through it.
Yeah. Well, now that you've like made it so far, if you could go back in time, what would you tell your 14-year-old or 15-year-old self about entrepreneurship? That's a tough one.
That is a tough one. I think probably is hard work pays dividends. This is like advice my dad keeps telling me, and I think it's really hard to get lost in it when shit's hitting the fan. But if you stick with it long enough, I swear, like the universe conspires to get you a good outcome. Like I firmly believe the deal we were able to get with Steyr was so beyond my wildest imaginations that like it was destiny at play, and like somewhere it was like this karmic justice, given how long we've been going with investors saying no to us, people around us like laughing at objectively how few downloads we had because we never had like the money to spend. We're just like keeping at it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, I think we've reached the end of the interview. Do you have any like final thoughts or words of encouragement for young founders?
Honestly, for young self-starters, this is the second time I've ever said yes to like an interview or a podcast, Philip. And the my rule is I want to support people who are completely unfounded. So you don't need to have like this crazy background. I know for a fact when I was first starting out, I had some incredible people just like willing to pay it forward and get on a call with me. My baseline rule was I will not reply back to you the first time for sure, rarely on the second. But if you follow up with me a third time, I will say yes, because then you remind me of me and I want to help you. So this is the reason I'm on this call today. For if anyone's made it to like this portion as well, all I will say is like You will need help along the journey. Reach out to people. And when you do your cold reach outs, the most important part is a genuine follow up, not those automated following up scheduled emails sent a week before. But like Philip was so good about it. I told him, like, reach out to me like 2 weeks from now. 14 days to that day, he reached out to me. Like, I couldn't say no to this kid. I couldn't do it, right? And I really think like the entire world can be unlocked with all the incredible people out there as long as you go about asking the right way and following up the right way.
That's fantastic advice.